Welcome to another edition of the Here We Go podcast. I am Trent Ging. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about just a quick recap of the AFC North standings right now. Going to go kind of arrow pointing up, arrow pointing down type thing. The obvious thing right now as Steeler fans, the Steelers are 3-0. They're atop of the division. And not only are we atop of the division, but we have a 2-game lead on the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. We have a 3-game lead on the Cincinnati Bengals. Our arrow currently is pointing up. We've talked about this. The offense seems to be moving a little bit better week in, week out. So each time Justin Fields and Arthur Smith get an opportunity to get a feel for each other, you're seeing that they're really putting something together here. And I like what I saw against the Chargers specifically, more so than I did against Denver or that Atlanta game. The goal should be a game where we can really start to capitalize on this momentum and hopefully push something to where we put a really, really good game together on the offensive side of the ball. Of course, the defense is as strong as can be. So you've got to think that this Pittsburgh Steelers team has the arrow pointing up. Now, I'll circle back to them later on, but I want to go to the Baltimore Ravens next because the Baltimore Ravens was a team the first 2 weeks they did not look good. I mean, they just did not look efficient with the football on offense. The offensive line was kind of a mess. They really struggled against that Kansas City Chiefs game in week 1. I thought last week, though, they started to put something together against the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys have been a team where you can run the football against them. They are not a very good run-first team. And also, that defense is really built to play with a lead. They're not built to come from behind because their run defense is atrocious. And Baltimore exposed that once again. I mean, Baltimore really just drove the football down their throat every single drive. Derrick Henry had a field day. It really wore down these pass rushers. Lamar Jackson had all day to throw the football when he did throw the ball. And the team looked 1,000 times better in their third week game than they did in the first two. They started looking more like the actual Baltimore Ravens that we're used to, a team that I think everybody predicted to win the AFC North this year. There were maybe 2 analysts that I can think of off the top of my head that probably picked the Bengals to win. But I really don't recall anybody else kind of picking against the Ravens. As of right now, everything's kind of upside down. With the Bengals being on the bottom part of this division, they look like a team that's completely lost. They're 100% upside down right now. Joe Burrow does not look like one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. I think a lot of people feel like he is. Higgins and Chase, as a result, haven't been nearly as effective as what we're used to. Now, Chase had a really nice game last week. I think so many people put all their eggs into the fact that all 3 of those guys were just going to carry this team to like some kind of a 11-12 win season. That's just not happening. Oh, man, I pointed out time and time again, specifically when Colin and I did the AFC North divisional breakdown and positional breakdown with the AFC North teams. This Bengals defense is not very good. Now, Lou Anarumo is actually a phenomenal defensive coordinator. I think he's very intelligent. He disguises very well. He just doesn't have a lot to work with. I just don't think there's a lot to work with on that defensive side of the football. You got Hendricks and Sam Hubbard coming off the edges. They're nice edges. They have a nice middle linebacker. They just don't have a lot outside of that, though. I mean, brand new safeties. One of their corners are brand new guys, like starters. That defense is just bad. Maybe at some point as the season goes on, they'll start to figure something out there and become a little bit better of a team. I think the Bengals finish last in this division unless the Browns just absolutely fall apart. But the Bengals just do not look like the team The Bengals don't look like the type of team that we've been used to with Joe Burrow leading this thing. And offensively, they're not putting a ton together. The offensive line, I mean, they've invested a ton of money into that offensive line. They still don't look great. The run game hasn't really gotten established. And it's literally been 3 guys expected to carry the entire workload for that team. And I just don't see that as a recipe for success. I know everybody thinks this is an offensive league. But so far, early on in this season, through 3 weeks, I think the defenses have really shown that they can handle these offenses now. It's not been the type of league that we've been used to. I mean, even a guy like Patrick Mahomes hasn't quite just kicked it into overdrive yet. The teams running the football are winning right now. And that's just a reality. The teams playing really good defense right now are winning right now. That's another reality. I mean, Kansas City's played very good defense. The Vikings played very good defense. The Steelers have played very good defense. The Seahawks is another team. They've played very good defense. And all these teams are undefeated. The other thing all these teams have had in common, they're all running the ball well. You're not seeing a bunch of 300-yard games out of any of these teams right now. It's all teams running the football and playing good defense. Now, offenses in general, I should say, usually do start the season a bit slow, and then they come on as the year goes on. So this could be just an early part of the season trend that we're seeing where some of these offenses are starting to get their feet wet a little bit. Some teams have new coaches. I don't know. I mean, that could be playing a factor, but I just honestly believe that some of the rules that we're seeing, especially with these illegal formations, tackles aren't setting up quite as deep as they used to because they're being called now, and the edge rushers are starting to have a little bit more of an advantage finally. It just seems a lot like this league's starting to flip a little bit, and we're starting to get back to more of a running football type of league. Play defense, and you might start hearing that defense wins championships motto starting to come back now. The Browns are the last team in the division as far as what I've talked about so far. The Browns have such a great roster, and it's amazing to me how year in and year out they just cannot figure out how to put together. I think Kevin Stefanski is actually a pretty good coach. I think he's also a pretty good play caller. Nick Chubb is missing, and it's very obvious because they run the entire offense through Nick Chubb. It's apparent that he's not there because they can't get anything going. They have zero run game right now. For one of the better offensive lines in football, and yes, I know they've missed their tackles in week 1. They really, I think both might have been missing in week 2 as well, if I'm not mistaken. If that was the Dallas game that I'm thinking of, Dallas ate that offensive line for lunch. But again, they couldn't establish the run, and that's the thing. If you have to throw the football 40 times against a team like Dallas, Dallas is going to tear you apart because they're built to rush the passer. Specifically with Micah Parsons. I mean, that dude's another kind of animal coming off the edge. And they move him around a lot. Cleveland's got such a good roster. I don't know when Nick Chubb could even possibly come back this season from such a devastating knee injury. But they put a lot of eggs in Deshaun Watson's basket, and that dude just cannot deliver. He is god-awful. I honestly, if I were them, I'd seriously consider starting Jameis Winston and just seeing what you have there. Flacco comes in last year. He starts carrying this team and lifting them into being a good team again. Why they didn't re-sign him, I don't care how old the guy is. You saw what he did last year under this team with this offense. I'd have kept him another season. They chose not to do that. Now it's Jameis Winston as the backup. I'd put the ball in his hands because Deshaun Watson just does not even remotely resemble that quarterback from 2020. Not at all. At one point, we talked about Watson being a top 5 quarterback in the entire NFL. He's not that guy now. I don't think he's ever going to return to that guy. I think everybody in Cleveland holding hopes that this guy's going to somehow figure it out and turn it around. It's not going to happen. He's gone. That guy is gone. He's probably the worst quarterback in this division. And we've, as Steeler fans, Justin Fields was supposed to be a backup. So I actually think he's probably the 5th best quarterback in the entire division, because I put Russell Wilson ahead of him too. As a matter of fact, I think me and Colin both put Russell Wilson ahead of Deshaun Watson when we did our breakdowns. That might go down as one of the worst trades in NFL history. Deshaun Watson, to give him all this guaranteed money and there's no real way out of that contract. Cleveland's stuck. It's a bad situation, but at some point you might just cut bait just to cut bait. You know, at one point they were high on this DTR kid. I don't know if you throw him out there again and see in year 2 if he gives you anything. He wasn't exactly a high round pick. I don't know why they were high on him, but they liked him. I just don't know what you do if you're Cleveland right now, because you've spent so much draft capital putting together what's actually a really solid. I mean, last year they were the best defensive team in football, period. I mean, it wasn't even a question. There's still a good defense this year, but when you're constantly on the field, it's impossible to shut teams down. I mean, it's just impossible. And right now, there's so many 3-and-outs happening in Cleveland. There's turnovers happening in Cleveland, and Deshaun Watson can't get out of his own way. I don't know what you do if you're that team, other than going to Jameis Winston and see if that guy provides a spark for you. That's probably your best case scenario. Because until somebody shows they can throw the football in Cleveland, there's just no chance in the world that as a defense, you're going to respect them even a little bit. I mean, you just stack the box and stop the run, and then you beat Cleveland. That's right now the game plan for every team coming in, because Watson clearly can't do it. And Watson didn't play horrible last week, but he really didn't play very well either. He had less than 200 yards passing. I don't think he threw an interception that I can recall. He's not doing what they're paying him to do either. And that's the problem. When you get $200 million guaranteed, you need to be the man, and you need to really lift this team up and be the best player on your team. And right now, I mean, he's not really much better than Jerome Ford, who's the backup running back in the NFL. It's ugly right now for them. And through all that, because they do have such a good defense, they still might finish ahead of Cincinnati in the division. I mean, they may finish 3rd. So if you're a Steeler fan right now, you've got to feel really good about where we're sitting. We got a very, very winnable game coming up against the Colts. Colin and I are going to be doing a breakdown of that tomorrow at 8. So I think you feel good about where you're at. You have an opportunity to extend your lead in the division, possibly. The Ravens have a pretty easy game this week as well. I can't recall who they play right off the top of my head right now, but I know they have a very winnable game when I was looking at it before the other day. I think Cleveland plays the Raiders, so Cleveland has a real chance to kind of have a bounce-back day against the Raiders team that just got absolutely smoked by the Carolina Panthers, who've been god-awful all season. Probably the worst team in football. So it should be an opportunity for Cleveland to bounce back this week and maybe try to find a little bit of something in their offense. I just don't have high hopes for the Bengals at all right now this year. And Joe Burrow does not look like the same quarterback. If he's not the same quarterback, this team's built to just get absolutely curb stomped every single week. I don't expect them to get blown out, but I don't expect them to finish with anywhere near 11 or 12 wins. I don't think this team's going to have a winning record, period. I think they're going to have a losing record. I think they're going to pick probably in the middle rounds or upper round of the first draft. I think they're going to lose. And I don't know. I think this team might win 7 games. Because they're going to win some games, because there's no doubt Joe Burrow is going to get hot. Chase and Higgins are going to have a day one day together. And they're going to win some games because of that, because they're just flat going to outscore people with this defense. I just don't know if this defense can stop anybody. And, I mean, Jaden Daniels was just absolutely torching this defense. He was absolutely nearly perfection. And for a rookie quarterback, I'm sorry, you cannot allow a rookie to do that. That's just terrible defense on their side. You're not getting a ton of pressure on that kid. You're not forcing bad throws. You're not creating turnovers. I mean, there's just no way you can expect to win a lot of football games in this league if you can't do that to a rookie. And I know Jaden Daniels was a second pick. He's still a rookie quarterback, and rookies stink. That's just the fact of life. So I am completely out on Cincinnati finishing anywhere near a winning record this year. That might be an early take, but listen, this team just looks in shambles right now. They just look like a shell of themselves. Cleveland, if they get something going offensively, I tell you what, they can make a run, and they can be competitive. I just think they need to move on from Deshaun Watson. I think they need to cut their losses and be done. And if they choose to do that sooner rather than later, I think they can win it. Maybe 50% of their games, finish maybe 9-8. Because their schedule's not terrible. And I think they can get 2 easy wins against the Bengals, because I think a lot of people are going to get easy wins against the Bengals right now. I think this whole division is going to tear the Bengals apart. But I think Cleveland can finish somewhere in an 8-9, 9-8 area. It's going to be real interesting to see how the Ravens play. If they continue to put it together right now and they continue to improve, they still can easily come back and win the division. It's only a couple of games right now. It's so early in the season. So much of this is hard to judge, to be perfectly honest with you. But I just think the Ravens are built as a team that's going to win, as long as they keep putting the ball in Derrick Henry's hands. And I thought that was a big mistake they made in week one. It was they just put so much of this on Lamar Jackson rather than putting more of it on Derrick Henry. I think that relationship continues to grow, and I think the two of them end up continuing to improve and doing better and better and better as we go. So, Steeler fans, you got to feel good about where you're at. The division's kind of like a mess right now, even though I still feel like we're one of the better divisions in football. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you are in the same boat. Am I kind of getting ahead of myself here, putting the cart before the horse, so to speak? And, of course, as always, like, share, and subscribe.